Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is May 1st, 2024, and today is a holiday here in Germany. It is the Tag der Arbeit, which is basically Labor Day here in this country, and it is thanks to German unions that pushed for the 8-hour day movement that advocated for 8 hours for work, 8 hours for recreation, and 8 hours for rest, that we now have Labor Day on May 1st. So we have a nice little break today. We got to celebrate by breaking in our new patio furniture. We got a new table and chairs, and it was such a nice sunny day today that we got to have lunch out on the patio in the nice sunshine. It probably won't last very long. It'll end up being rainy and drizzly again here pretty soon. But for today, it's a wonderful holiday. And I hope that you are having a wonderful day wherever you are. And we have got a fantastic author interview for you today to help you enjoy your afternoon or evening, wherever you are. We are going to be speaking with a fantastic sci-fi author who has several books out at the moment. We're going to be speaking to him about his latest publication, Overlap: The Lives of a Former Time Jumper. So please welcome to Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, your book talk podcast, N. Joseph Glass. Thank you so much for being here with me today. As usual, we start out by having you introduce yourself and tell the people who you are and what you do.
Thank you. I am N. Joseph Glass. I am a part-time IT consultant and more-time independent author. Stay primarily in the genre of speculative science fiction.
Whenever I started doing a little bit of research on you, I was very surprised. There's not a lot of background on you personally. And you put out your first book, August of 2022. And it seems like you really enjoyed that process because you took off like a shot after that. And you had another book published in January of 23, February of 23, September of 23, and then this book came out in October of 23. So I'm guessing you enjoyed the process.
I fell in love with it, actually. I started writing when I was young. I wrote some Star Trek, as a young fan. I wrote a little comic book years ago that never went anywhere. And I rekindled that passion for creativity during COVID, during the lockdowns, when I found myself with a bit of extra time. And I had the idea for that first book. I didn't realize that the story idea and the characters I created would grow into a trilogy. So that's why I had 3 consecutive releases, because I just kept writing. I didn't want the story of that protagonist, Gift Ojo from Colony's Dawn. I didn't want her story to end. So book 1 does come to a satisfying conclusion. It could be a standalone novel, but I continued her story and the story of the colonists in New Europa into books 2 and 3. And then the other one is a very small novella that's a side story, like a backstory to some of the characters in that same trilogy. So yeah, I started and I just kept going. I fell in love with the process of creating worlds and characters and writing them.
So what made you step away from that storyline to create Overlap?
I thought I went as far as I needed to with Colony's Dawn and the New Europa Trilogy. And I had this other idea sort of brewing in my mind that I wanted to. I relate a good bit to Marcus Hollister. Not everything that he does, not his genius and his wealth, and certainly not some of his quirks, but the loss and the grief and how to deal with it, getting stuck in a moment. He's a time jumper, but really in his life, he's sort of stuck in the past, metaphorically, and trying to get over that and deal with finding redemption and coming to grips with his life after grief. And so I put a lot of myself into that. And I had this story and this, what if you could try to go back and fix the worst part of your life? And then what would happen if it doesn't always work? If you can't undo the damage, how would you live and move forward? So that rolled around in my mind for a while before I decided to actually create Marcus and give him a story.
Well, and there's always kind of an ethical aspect that comes up in stories like these. Because should you go back? Should you change things? How could you affect somebody else's life by fixing yours. You could destroy somebody else's unintentionally. Did you play with those ideas in this story?
I did. And in my mind and in his determination, I think it comes through that Marcus can be a bit selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought of one thing when he wanted to go back in time. He thought of reuniting himself with his lost love, Ellie. And that was his motivation. He didn't think through a lot of the consequences. And when he learns that he can relive moments in the past, but he can't change the present. If he goes back in time and he prevents Ellie from dying, he can live some new memories with her during that jump, during that overlap of time travel. But when he comes out of the machine back into his present life, nothing has changed. He can't alter the past. However, the application of his invention do have some repercussions he did not think about when it was commercialized and used by the military. So we delve into that as well, some of the consequences that do affect the real world in how it's used, even though it can't change the past. So it gets kind of interesting to see what develops that Marcus never even thought could be a consequence of his invention.
And I think it's those kinds of questions that makes speculative sci-fi even more interesting.
Yeah, you have to have some kind of moral challenge or dilemma, something that the character either ignored, didn't think of, or has to overcome. And it makes it much more interesting. It's just a guy who goes back in time and tries to relive moments. It could be interesting, but on its own, it's not much there. But when you add the feelings behind it, his emotional turmoil, and then dealing with the consequences and why at such a late point in his life, he takes the first interview he's ever offered to finally tell the story and to dig into those consequences and tell the world what happened as a result of what he had done and how he's trying to come to terms with it, I think makes the story a lot more compelling.
Now, we're going to come back to the story here in a second, but there is something that I find very interesting about you personally, because we have something in common. Both of us have left the United States to live in Europe.
Yes.
What brought you to that change?
Well, I have Italian origin.
Mm-hmm.
My great grandparents left Italy. So I was looking for a place to go where I could legally establish myself as a resident. I actually was able to legally establish myself as a citizen. I have dual citizenship now because of my Italian heritage. And it was time for a change to get out of America and do something more with some of my free time. I volunteer time here with some of the refugees that are coming from Africa and some other countries that come to a country that a lot of people here don't speak English or any other language besides Italian. And so imagine these people coming, they need help, they need guidance, they need some kind of encouragement and motivation, and they don't speak Italian. So I'm part of a group that helps in English to get some of these people settled and get them on a journey more than what they came for, more than just for finance and for finding a job and for fleeing a difficult situation, but to actually get them grounded with some kind of hope and focus in their life. So that's primary motivation of why I'm currently in Italy. And my work allows me the opportunity to live where I want, both my writing and my IT consulting. So I'm very privileged to be able to be here and use my time, hopefully, wisely.
See, now that's actually even more of a coincidence because what brought us here was my husband's job. He works in IT and he is half German. So that's why we chose Germany. Now, the real question is, how good is your Italian?
I have been here for 8 years, but if I speak Italian, it doesn't sound like I've been here for 8 years.
That's like my German.
Yeah, I get by, but I find, especially in Milan, I do find people who speak English some, and the little bit of Italian I can speak, I get by.
Yeah.
Certainly not good enough to translate my own book. I'm thinking about getting a translator for Overlap since I live here and I have connections in Italy and Milan. But I'm too lazy to get it right. But I need to work on it. I've been rekindling some of my lessons to try to ramp it up because I'm pretty confident I'm staying here. So I need to improve my Italian.
Same way I feel about my German, but they have like 15 different ways to say the word the. It's like not an easy language.
Yeah.
Are you a pantser or a plotter?
I plot a little bit. I generally outline
Hmm.
and then I deviate.
Yeah.
That's the best way I think I could describe it. I had a general outline for where Marcus Hollister's story would end in overlap,
Hmm.
but his finish is very, very close to my original idea. The second primary character in the story, Jessica Matthews, she goes in very different directions from my original outline. So I like an outline for structure, but I don't stick to it. I like to be surprised as I'm writing and
Yeah.
sometimes come up with something I didn't think about. It makes the creative process a lot more fun.
Yeah. I always try every single time that I write a new book to do a solid plot for the whole thing from beginning to end. And it never sticks to that. I get
Yeah.
close, but the characters in my head deviate all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In my first series, in Colonies Dawn, that went mostly how I planned it. But as I was halfway through the second book, Colonies Fall, I came up with a character I never dreamed of, wasn't in any of my outlines, wasn't in any of my plans, and became an integral character in book two and carries on into book three. And it was just a spur of the moment, like, well, what if this person
Hmm.
showed up? And this woman just became a principal character for half of my trilogy, and it was not plotted or planned at all.
See, and I love those moments though, because I think that's when you know your creativity is really growing,
Yeah.
that things like that just suddenly occur to you and it takes your story into a much deeper, fuller character.
Yeah, I agree. And part of the joy that you have, even when you're a reader, when I still I'm an avid reader. I love
Hmm.
reading a lot of sci-fi and some other things, but it's the unexpected. Sometimes there's a twist in a story I'm reading. Oh, I didn't see that coming. I didn't think of that. I didn't
Hmm.
anticipate that, and that makes it fun. But you can have the same thing as a writer, as an author,
Hmm.
because your mind might shift somewhere and say, "Oh, well, what if this happened?" And it's something I never thought about, and it does keep it very lively, very entertaining as a writer to be able to do that.
One thing I was really impressed about with Overlap is you have a great audiobook version of this
Yes.
with two narrators on it. How did that come about? Because I know from talking to other people, I don't have any audiobooks out, but I know it can get very expensive, especially when you have more than one narrator.
Yes, it is an expensive process. I was actually very excited to get an award for Colonies Dawn. It's a different narrator for that, but because the protagonist there is a woman in her mid 20s and the narrator is quite close to that age,
Mm-hmm.
and she does a great job at putting a lot of emotion into it and doing the different characters. And we actually got the 2023 Sci-Fi Audiobook of the Year from
Wow,
audiobookraeviewer.com,
that's amazing.
which was very exciting. Yeah. So I have this, she's working now on the next two for the same narrator for the entire trilogy. But with
Nice.
this book, with overlap, a lot of this is dialogue between two characters. In fact, one of my readers who left a nice review said they were amazed how interesting it was when you think of it's mostly just two people sitting and talking,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot of the story. And since there's so much back and forth and it rests so heavily on developing those two characters, I just thought, what if we had a male voice for the narrator and Marcus, because it's first person told from Marcus' point of view, and then a female to Jessica. And I reached out and got some auditions, and Scott Ellis manages some of these beautiful talent that he's got at his disposal. And he put these two together for me and did an audition. And this was perfect. The back and forth, the way it flows with having two narrators, I thought just really brought the story to life. So I wanted to invest a little bit to give a listener a really special experience to really feel this story come to life.
Yeah, I think you've definitely managed that with your audiobook.
Yes.
Now, do you notice a significant pull in one direction? Because you have this available in Kindle, paperback, and audio. Is there a significant preference for readers or listeners?
Without a doubt, it's the Kindle. Yeah. I have some sales in paperback, and the audiobook is catching up. It was released a bit later,
Hmm.
but I'm marketing that a little bit heavier now, and it's on sale. So I think as people find that, they might gravitate to it, especially if they hear it and like that dynamic of the two narrators. But definitely the Kindle version, even more so the purchased Kindle version than the Kindle Unlimited.
Mhm.
Last week, about a week and a half ago, it actually got up to number 5
Oh,
in the
nice.
top 100 of the Kindle paid books. So in 2 categories, it was in the top 25. And in one category, it hit the number 5. So I was very excited to be getting that much popularity, but that was solely based on the EPUB, the Kindle version.
Well, in considering that it's actually been when it came out in October of 23, for that to happen right now, that's unusual because usually it happens right after you drop it and you
Yes.
get like a big push right at the beginning and then it kind of starts to taper off and become just a regular steady stream. So for it to happen now, that means something in your advertising is going right, that you're getting a big notice with it at this point.
Yeah, I've been more serious about the advertising. It got to number 1 when I offered it for free.
Hmm.
I did a promotion and marketed that a little bit, and it got a lot of interest and it stayed at number 1 for a day and a half on Amazon, which was great. But it was number 1 in free books. So to
Hmm.
get into the top 5 now that it's back to being a paid book, it was really good. It's won a couple of awards. Recently been reviewed by Kirkus. It was very
Oh,
reputable
nice.
reviewer, and their verdict was get it. So I was very happy to see that. So when it gets awards like Literary Titan Award for January 2024, I market those. So hopefully readers might say, well, if it's getting some notoriety, maybe it's worth my time. So I am working on trying to get the marketing out there so more readers can enjoy it.
Yeah, because you actually got the Gold Award for the Literary Titan,
Yes.
and Reader's Favorite also gave you 5 stars.
Yes.
So obviously not bad.
No, and the reviews are really positive. Most of them are 4 or 5 stars. So that is very rewarding to me. The readers are enjoying it, and some are contacting me to tell me what they enjoyed about it and other observations. So that's the most rewarding part to me as an author, that readers are actually saying, hey, I really like this, or I related to this, or this made me think in this way. And some of the readers are telling me they thought about things that I never thought of when I was writing it. So that's very rewarding.
Well, and so many people put on here that it's a thought-provoking book, that
Yes.
it's emotionally weighted with loss, regret, love, and advanced technology. I love that one.
Yeah, I think that balance is what is attracting readers, that it's not an overly sci-fi heavy book, and I don't delve too deeply into the technology behind time travel. There is a section where Marcus explains the basics behind it, of the mechanics, but I delve a little bit more into what doesn't work about it
Hmm.
and why he considers it a failure, even though it launched a multi-trillion-dollar business, because his business partner found a way to market it to give people the opportunity to go back in their own timelines and relive moments of their lives with no consequence seemingly to the present. But then what happens there turns out to be quite devastating to Marcus. So I think a little bit of the technology, the interest of going back and redoing moments in time, but then the emotional toll and consequence is where the thought provoking part really comes into play. And several people have told me it made them think of loss and regret. It made them think of redemption. It made them think of the consequences of decisions that we make. And sometimes we have to live with them, or sometimes we can learn and maybe make better decisions because we think about what might happen as a
Hmm.
consequence. So it seems like a lot of readers have thought in many different ways, but I think when you read something that can have that effect on you, that's what we really look for as readers, not just to be entertained, but also to open our minds and to think.
What do you think it was that inspired this whole storyline?
It was mostly me, actually. I don't want to turn this too much to a downer, but the thing that Marcus and I have in common is losing a wife at a younger age. And that effect stays with you no matter how you pick yourself up, no matter how you go on, no matter what happens.
Hmm.
And I think the thought of what impact that really has on your personality, on your psyche. I didn't go in the same direction as Marcus with mine, but that was, I pulled a lot of myself out of that. And I had read and seen even a film that dealt with various topics of time travel and the effects, like we said, the butterfly effect, what could you alter? If you want to fix your one little thing, what could you ruin or damage for everyone else? And from that to, we could go back in time, but nothing changes. And how does that impact you? So I tried to find a blend of the two where you can't change the past, but it doesn't mean there are no effects in the future. So I put all that together and a story came out of it.
Was writing a story like this that was connected to your own history cathartic at all?
I would say yes. It has to be, right? When you put yourself into your characters, it has to affect you.
Now, your first trilogy, was there anything personal about that? Because I know for me, I don't ever intentionally do it with most of my work, but somehow I'm always putting myself
Yeah.
or my experiences in there somehow. Was there a little bit in your first trilogy?
Yeah, and I think that's how an author has their voice, right? That cliched idea that the author has their voice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's your style because you put yourself into it. And nobody else could do that. I couldn't do your voice. You couldn't do mine because I'm not you. You're not me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a lot of the characters are more based on people that I know. While there's not a single character that is a person that I know, they're
Mm-hmm.
combinations. But there's a little bit of myself, even though I'm a very different person than a 26-year-old female living in a colony.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit of myself in Gift Ojo, the main character, and a bit of myself in Mike, her good friend. He's a bit more cynical and a little maybe rough around the edges. So yeah, I definitely feel a little bit of myself in there because I'm thinking as I'm writing, well, what would I do if this happened? What would this person that I know, what would they do if that happened? And usually the conclusion is a combination of a little bit of me and a little bit of someone that I know.
Now, you have sons, right?
Yes.
Have they read your work?
They're working on it. Yes. They're not readers, they're musicians. So it's a challenge to get them to read most of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But my oldest son is working through Colony's Dawn, and my younger son is working through Overlap right now.
Have they given you any feedback?
Not really, only that they're surprised that I created it. In the past, my creativity, like I said, I dabbled in some recreational writing, but my creativity had more come through in painting. I do a little oil painting, and that had been my sole outlet for creativity for a while. So the fact that I'm now writing in these last several years, that's a shock enough to them. I don't share their talent for music. They did not get it from me, but that's how they express their creativity, and they spend most of their time doing that. So for them to even be determined to pull a little time aside to read a chapter or two and work their way through a book, I'm happy with that.
Now, that's another good question. Whenever you're writing, do you listen to music or does it have to be quiet? Because I know a lot of authors that they will actually even pair the music that they're listening to the type of scene that they're writing.
I haven't actually tried that. I prefer quiet generally. In fact, I do most of my writing late in the evening,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't tried it with music. But interestingly, the artist who helped me with one of my covers, my first one, he asked me what type of soundtrack do I imagine would go with my story.
Mm-hmm.
That was trying to help him with his creativity to come up with what the design should look like, looking at the story and the music, what would the image look like? And I thought, oh, that was an interesting way to connect three different expressions of art into one sort of commonality. And I never really quite got to that point myself of seeing what music really fit.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, both in Colony's Dawn series, the New Europa series, and Overlap, I do reference some music and some artists and some specific songs. So those are on my mind as I'm writing, but I haven't actually tried listening to them.
That's very interesting. So now this is the point of the show that we like to do 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but I'm just too stubborn to stop doing it.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Sure.
Question 1. Since you are a sci-fi enthusiast, if you had to give up one, which one would it be? Star Trek or Star Wars?
I would give up Star Wars reluctantly, but if I had to choose, I would stick with Star Trek. I'd still go back to the originals. It's before my time, but I just love the original Captain Kirk and Spock.
Yeah, we watch a lot of the old shows in this house too.
Yep.
Question 2. Since you're living in Italy and you are Italian, how do you feel about Aperol spritzers?
Not my favorite. It's very popular in Milan. I prefer when we do go out for the aperitivo,
Mhm.
which is a drink and something to eat. I usually go with a Negroni, which is also very popular here, but I'm not so much into the spritz.
Well, because we have friends, my husband's best friend actually lives in Turin and we go to visit them a
Oh,
lot. And every time we go out, it's like that's like the thing. Everybody has these spritzers.
yeah,
I'm not fond of, they're too bitter.
it's wine with bitters, and it's just why I don't know. I
Yeah.
have friends who love it, and it's fine,
Yeah.
but not for me.
I can usually get through one, but that's my limit.
Yeah,
So now question 3, another important question, definitely because you're in Italy. Cappuccino afternoon, yes or no?
I don't do that. It's looked down upon. You might
Mhm.
get one, but you'll get one with a stare.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not much for cappuccino to begin with,
Mhm.
so I don't really miss it. But Italians are always shocked when we tell them that in America, at least where I was, very often Americans will order a cappuccino with their dessert after dinner.
Mhm.
And that just drives Italians crazy. Like 11:30 is the maximum in the morning that you can push for a cappuccino. After
Yeah.
that, it's just espresso. And I'm fine with that because I prefer espresso myself.
I've been very thankful that since we live here in Germany, there's not that timeline idea because I do
Yeah.
like a cappuccino after dinner. I do. I admit
Yeah.
it. But when we do go visit our friends in Italy, I curb that desire and just go with espresso because I don't want my husband trying to hide.
Yeah. Yep.
So now, question 4. What do you miss most about living in the United States?
The only thing I really miss is people. We try to go back about once a year. I wouldn't go back as often if not.
Hmm.
But aside from that, the other thing I would say, other than people, would be actual variety of foods. The food here is fantastic,
Hmm.
but foreign foods, international foods are not always great and quite expensive.
Hmm.
I just miss being able to go to a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
Especially when I lived in Georgia, they were all over the place. Good people from Mexico running these restaurants, great food. You can't get decent Mexican food here. Thai food is rare and expensive. But yeah, I'd say international foods is what I probably miss the most, second to people.
I was going to say air conditioning. You need to come visit Dusseldorf, Germany, because
Mm.
we actually have a huge section in the center of town that is a large Asian community. And there
Ah,
are very good Thai restaurants, Japanese restaurants, Chinese restaurants, Indian restaurants. There are tons here in
mm.
Dusseldorf, Germany, and they're run by people from those countries.
That's the best. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
found a couple of really nice Sri Lankan restaurants here,
Ooh,
run by Sri Lankans, and it's very similar to Indian cuisine, but they have their own twist on certain
mm,
things, and that's been kind of a go-to for us here.
that sounds very good.
Mhm.
So now question 5. What is the best thing about living in Milan?
Hmm. Oddly enough, the same answer is people. I have some great people around me here, but I think as far as living in Milan, the nearness to everything. I
Yeah.
can get around Milan very easy by metro. And from Milan, I can go anywhere. I've been able to see parts of Europe, different parts of Italy. The high speed trains all pass through the central station of Milan. So from here, I can go anywhere in Italy. Over the summer, my sons took a Eurorail trip and they spent 2.5 weeks just going to, I think, 7, 8 different cities throughout Europe.
Nice.
So I think that's one of the nicest things is Milan is a hub. So
Hmm.
life here is fine. There's a lot of nice things, museums, restaurants, and shows. But aside from that, I think being able to get almost anywhere I want from here, usually at reasonable cost and
Hmm.
travel time, is fantastic.
Yeah, that is one of the things that we have found that is really nice with being in Dusseldorf with the international airport,
Hmm.
that it's just so easy to pick up and go to Italy for the weekend or
Yeah.
go to London for a play or something. And I'm actually originally from Kansas, where there is no public transportation to speak of. So the fact that I live here in a city that has streetcars and subways
Yep.
and, tons, buses and taxis everywhere, it's just absolutely amazing. We've lived here for about 8 years as well, and we don't even own a car. We don't need to. There's a train on every street.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fantastic thing. I was raised in New York where we had subway system and buses.
Mm-hmm.
But when I lived outside of Atlanta, we had nothing. Everybody had to have a car.
Mm-hmm.
So usually families had multiple cars. As soon as someone's old enough to drive, they need a car.
Mm-hmm.
But you couldn't walk to the grocery store. So that was a big difference. And coming here, I'm a 2-minute walk to the metro. And from there, I'm anywhere I need to be.
Yeah.
Now we have a metro that goes right to the airport, which is just
fantastic.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to take like 2 different trains to get to the airport from here, but still not bad.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely fabulous. Let's go ahead and remind everybody again who you are and the book that we have been talking about.
Yes, I am Ann Joseph Glass, and right now I'm very excited to talk about Overlap, the Lives of a Former Time Jumper.
And where can people buy Overlap?
Primarily on Amazon in the Kindle version, also the audiobook. And the audiobook is fantastic, as you mentioned, with 2 narrators. And it's also available through Barnes & Noble, as well as, I believe it is on Apple as well for the audiobook.
And you are in Book Banter magazine, along with your contact information and live links so that people can buy your book. And as always, your contact information is going to be in the description of today's podcast and on our website.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, Diane. I enjoyed it.
And just for the record, you actually did the 5 quick questions the quickest we have ever done.
Nice. Good.
So we have a new record to shoot for.
Excellent. Good.
So there you have it, folks. My interview with the amazing N. Joseph Glass. Be sure to check out his book, Overlap, The Lives of a Former Time Jumper. You can find it on Amazon and where fine books are sold. Now, don't forget, you can check out more information about all of the authors who have been on our broadcast through April and May in our current issue of Book Banter magazine. Just go to our website, burkhartbooks.com, and you can find all of the information there. You can also find other information for the authors who are going to be on our broadcast for the rest of May. I think we're going to go ahead and end everything here today, folks. So you go ahead and go out and enjoy the weather if it's nice where you are. And if not, stay inside and read a good book. But no matter what, it's time for you to go forth and be happy.